New developments tonight in the case of Miles Dobson, the 4-year-old we told you about last night. He was tortured to death by his caregiver in a New York City apartment. And we just learned that 1 week after he was killed, his family has finally come forward to claim the little boy's body. Miles met his tragic fate last week after police say he was bound, gagged, beaten, burned, and starved by his caregiver. A 27-year-old who was just arraigned on charges of assault, endangerment, and unlawful imprisonment. His father, at the time of the alleged abuse, was in jail. His mother unaware of what was taking place because she had lost custody of her son. And after we first reported this story last night, many of you weighed in, outraged over the government's failure to protect children like Miles Dobson. Tony Herbert is advising the Dobson family, and Mel Robbins is a former legal aid criminal defense attorney. Thank you both for joining me here on CNN. This is a very important story, and so we want to help in this story, help prevent these situations from happening again. So Tony, first to you. There's a lot of finger pointing over who let this child down, whether it was the government, whether it was Miles' family. Where was Miles' mother? I mean, she told reporters that she had weekly visitation rights. How did she not know what was going on with her own son?
Well, I mean, she lost total communication with regards to the father. He had stopped communicating. They had visitation once a week. Or every other week, I should say, for that matter. So, what I want to be very clear about is whatnot. She's not the person that killed Miles. She is a mother. She's an innocent victim in this situation who just had some serious issues in the past that she was working herself through to put herself in a better position to get better access to her kid.
Mel, the boy's father, Okie Wade, reportedly has a rap sheet with at least 13 arrests. Do you blame the government for placing this child with a father who may have been an unfit, not may have been an unfit parent, apparently was an unfit parent?
It was reported that we were blaming...
This is for Mel. This is for Mel.
I'm sorry.
So first of all, I don't really blame the government for what happened. There's one person that's responsible for this. It's the monster that killed this poor little boy. But Don, I do pause for a second and say to myself, what judge, what administrator, what government official decides in that capacity when they're reviewing a case, okay, we're going to put him with the guy with 13 arrests. I mean, family has come out of the woodwork now that this young soul is lost. Where were they through the entire process? I blame people in this order. I blame the monster that killed him, Don, first and foremost. Then I blame the father for dropping his kid off with somebody that he's only known for about a month. Then I blame the extended family for not knowing and checking in on where this kid was all through the holidays.
And the mother?
It wasn't a caregiver. It was the mother. Look, the state had already determined that she was not in a place in her life, Don, to have primary custody. So I don't actually chalk her up with having the capacity, Don, to be responsible enough, because the state already said she wasn't. Right,
and supposedly they were supposed to put the child in the care of someone who was responsible. Tony, the question a lot of people asked when we said, when we checked with investigators and authorities yesterday, they said the body had not been claimed. Why did it take a week for the family to claim the child's body?
Well, one, there's a process, keeping in mind that there's no insurance on the child, so that had to be identified with. Culminate that with the thought process that, there's paperwork that has to be done. We actually came in with a team. We've had the attorneys ready to help and give her guidance on this process. We also came in with a funeral director who's worked with us on a number of other cases dealing with shootings in our very own communities, who we knew that we can trust that would do right by this family financially. And so we were prepared to do that. It was just a matter of the paperwork at the ME's office.
Okay. So, Mel, Arizona's Governor Jan Brewer dissolving the state's Child Protective Services Agency after revelations that the agency failed to investigate 6,500 reports of abuse and neglect. I mean, and listen, this happens across the country. I don't know if there are 6,500 cases, but in each state. I mean, is this the right move?
Don, one of the things that I really liked about what the governor's doing is she's making this a cabinet-level position. When I think about our country, when I think about a state, our greatest natural resource is actually future generations. And so I think it's hugely appropriate and very empowering that she's going to make this a cabinet-level position. I also think, if you've got a child services association, Don, that can't handle 6,500 cases or allegations of abuse, the foundation's broken. When you have a house with a foundation that doesn't work, you raise it and you build something new. And so I admire what she's doing.
Listen, Brewer is creating an agency that will now report directly to the agency, or as you said, to the government, some accountability. She was adamant that the system in Arizona that it has in place now does not work. I want you to listen.
It breaks my heart and makes me angry. Enough with uninvestigated reports of abuse and neglect. Enough with the lack of transparency. And enough with the excuses.
So is what Tony, is what she's doing in Arizona correct? And should that happen across the country? I spoke with an attorney last night and said our whole system needs to be overhauled.
Well, you know what? We have the utmost confidence, and yes, totally. I think that should be done. And we have the utmost confidence with the new ACS Commissioner, Gladys Carrion, who has experience in dealing with these issues. And we have a lot of confidence in our mayor to do his due diligence to make sure that our children are not falling through the cracks any longer. So we're working with them. We give them that confidence. But again, it's the judicial system we have the ultimate problem with.
Mel, I know that this issue for you that you've been very passionate about, and that is the family. Not that anyone, as we said, no one is blaming the mother here when you look at the circumstances of what the mother was dealing with. But you say a breakdown of the family, and it's something that we really need to get a handle on.
Yeah, you know, it makes me really upset, Don, to keep hearing people say that this was the government's fault for letting this kid fall through the crack. The first obligation to this kid was by his family, his father, his mother, and the extended network of his family. He's got relatives that live in the area, Don, and you cannot have children and then say, well, there's somebody else's problem when the parents screw up. And so I say, stop looking at the government as the first line of defense and take a deep, hard look in the mirror and say to yourself as a family, hey, it might be a niece, it might be a nephew, it might be a cousin. There's still our responsibility. Right. And so I see Tony shaking his head on this one.
Tony, that's going to have to be, just for time purposes, I'm really sorry. And this conversation will continue. We are devoted here on Outfront to these types of stories and trying to save children in America. We will have you back. And if you have new information about this particular case, make sure you get in touch with us. Thank you, Tony. Thank you very much, Mel. Still to come.